So my name's Jacob Zemer, and usually I talk a little bit about myself at the beginning because through the course of this, you'll realize I'm crazy. And so it just kind of helps you like set the tone of like, why is this person as intense as he is? Who is he, the person? And then we'll get into what I actually do today for a living. I was born in a town called Portville, New York, population 959 people. My mom became pregnant with me at 16 years old. My dad was an alcoholic. I was dyslexic, I was ADD. There was really not a really positive trend where things were gonna be heading in my life. I didn't read till I was about the 4th grade. Actually, my mom, who was very, very pinned on me and me being successful and having a different life than me, got me into reading comic books, which then I just went right through. I was into Edgar Allan Poe. I was reading J.R.R. Tolkien. I went from a kid who couldn't read in 4th grade to a kid with college reading level by the time I was in high school. So kudos to mom, she really kind of saved the day, but the outlook wasn't good in the beginning. My most pervasive memory of my father was my mom and my stepdad went away for the weekend. I wanted to stay with him. My dad had a couple of bottles of wine in, was telling me that my Ninja Turtles were dolls. I was crying, telling him they're not, proceeded to throw them out in front of me. So it was a really rough start for me. There's a lot of negative things about all that, but I also credit my dad for being the one who got me into weight training because my dad was a macho man. So he really did get me into lifting weights. And that was where I first found a sense of identity. It was at the YMCA at 14 years old, again, back to a town called Portville, New York, where there's nobody, nothing's going on. And I saw this dude who had a Dodge Viper and he was jacked. And I was like, I want to be like that when I grow up. I was like, that's the guy. And I was in the YMCA, I was working out, I had no fucking idea what I was doing. And I was a little intimidated. Like the first time, to be honest with you, I went to go bench press. I was always pretty strong in my lower body. But the first time I went to bench press, there was a girl there. She was a couple years older, but she was benching more than I could bench. And so it was a rough experience. You know, the truth is people do what they're good at. So if you go play baseball and you're fucking amazing at baseball, you or your kid is gonna wanna keep playing baseball. If you go play baseball and it's a traumatic experience, you're not gonna wanna keep playing baseball. So I'm in this gym and I'm fighting for my life here, but I know what I wanna do. I know I wanna be that fucking jacked dude who has the fucking Dodge Viper, but I'm really struggling. And I see Chris Tom, and Chris Tom is 1 year older than I am, and we're friends more than from in high school, but more because Chris and I go to the same youth group. So I see Chris and he's lifting, I'm like, Chris, will you train me? And can I work out with you? And he's like, no, dude. And I was like, Chris, will you train me? I kept bothering him. And he said, if you pick up and put away all of our weights, we can work out together. So I did. All summer long, I learned from Chris how to train. Chris was jacked, by the way. The only other thing I'll say in all of this is I've always had common sense. I remember we were training together and he showed me an article about Ronnie Coleman's leg day. And I looked at it and I go, well, we're not Ronnie Coleman. We're not gonna do 27 sets of legs. So I never fell for any of the marketing bullshit, but that was my way out. And what ended up happening was years later, I went into college. I had a really good run at college. I ended up going to a really good MBA program. I was deathly afraid of being poor. I was not gonna be poor. I grew up poor. To me, even still to this day, there's disease and then there's poverty, right? Short of that, of disease, poverty is the worst thing that can happen to you. And I don't wanna hurt anybody's feelings when I say that, but that is truly my mentality. If you go through poverty, you have to eat a ton of shit. When you have no leverage, you have to go through a ton of shit. And so I was definitely afraid of it. I said, I'm not gonna be a trainer, even though that's what I was very passionate about. So I went into finance because that's where the fucking money is. And I met this girl in college, fell in love with her, came from total money, went through senior year, we ended up breaking up. I'd already got a job in the city. So now I'm in the city, I have no fucking clue. I hate the fucking city. I only moved there for her. I'm in the fucking city. I hate this fucking job. And everybody's like, well, but you're on the right course. I leave it. I leave that job. Everybody thought I was fucking nuts. My parents wrote me off, everybody wrote me off. And I went and took a job at Equinox Mamaroneck. I had always been the guy from the point I met Chris Tom where people were like, Jake, what about this? What about that? I quickly became the guy that people wanted to lift with. So transition to Equinox Mamaroneck, I quickly blow up. I become top 20, I got top #1 in the club in 6 months. Within a year, I'm top 25 in the club. When I explain to you Equinox Mamaroneck, I will tell you one of my biggest clients was the CEO of AIG. I've worked with the CFO of BlackRock. I had one of my clients is part owner. I went to the Yankees game on Wednesday. One of my clients is part owner of the Yankees game. I got those tickets for $300. They were probably $5,000 tickets. Tonight, a client of mine got me into Resdora. It's a Michelin star Italian restaurant I'm taking my wife to. I don't say that to bullshit you. I say that more to say the level of clientele that I'm dealing with now is astronomical. It's most people's dream client. I have a part owner of the Dolphins. I have a part owner of the Giants. I have a part owner of the Yankees who come in and see me on a weekly basis. I have the largest grossing PT business on the East Coast. I only worked 15 hours a week doing that, and it's still the largest grossing PT business on the East Coast. Remember I said how I have to tell you where I came from so you just don't think this guy's this complete douchebag who's crazy? That's why I tell you where I came from and to where I am today. And today I have a very happy life that has really been built on the backs of getting very successful men in the best shape of their life. And so there's two things you need for that. You need knowledge, but you also need to understand demographic. What do I mean by that? The plights that you have going through life if you are a influencer, fitness influencer, or trainer, Pat and I have no excuse to be out of shape. Our entire life is built around this thing. So, but if you are a CEO of AIG, your life is not built around fitness. And so the things that you're dealing with are very different now. My life is very different now. I was at the World Series on Wednesday. I'll be at Resdora. I'm in a suite at the Giants game tomorrow. I have a very different life now, which is why I'm gonna talk to you about different stages of nutrition and how to program it regardless where you're at. And that's what we're gonna talk about today, is the basics of nutrition, which basically helped me climb my way out of poverty, be an Equinox trainer that was making $32,000 a year, to now a guy who has a couple of his dream cars and has a beautiful house on 3 acres and the whole 9 yards. So that's what we're here to talk about, basics of nutrition. I did not buy the Viper. It's not the car, but I really did, honestly, and I don't say this but I really did go from a kid. I was very, very lost about 8-9 years ago. And I really do have the life that, like, if you asked me, like, of what I dreamed of. I got it through helping people get in the best shape of their life. And regardless of where people are at, most of the principles that I have, whether you're CFO of whatever, or you're just a person who has a family and a career, will actually work for you. Because that's a very different game if you have a family and a career versus if you're me or Pat, right? Again, me and Pat have no excuse to be out of shape. But if you have other priorities, that's where it gets a little fucking difficult. So let's talk about the starting point is nutrition for dummies, okay? And what I would say, can I spell dummies? What I would say to you is basic. If you don't really give that much of fucking shit about learning nutrition and you just don't have time to do it all, the simplest thing that you can do is only eat lean protein, fruit, and vegetables at a very, very basic level. That is not optimal nutrition to you, and that's also not the most realistic thing you can do. But if you are here right now and you're like, Jake, I'm out of shape and I can't really figure it out, and I need you to give me like a super simple hack, that is the simplest hack I can give you. Just eat protein, fruit, veggies. This sounds really, really, really simple, Vin, but it's not actually really simple if you want to get into an optimizing it. And that's why we're going to go through this and we're going to get a little bit more advanced. We're starting with super simple stuff. We'll get into supplements. We'll talk about like NAC and we'll talk about ubiquinol and things like that. But let's just start with the basics. And this would be the basics even in my diet. This is the core principle of nutrition. Right? But if I'm gonna go have a pasta tasting menu tonight, clearly I don't just follow this anymore and I have to think about little things a little bit. I wanna start here because this is still the foundation of my nutrition. And if you are just completely fucking lost at the moment about how to eat, this is what you can do and pull on. So within protein, there's both lean and fatty protein. Steak is an example of protein. Steak can be just as lean as chicken. It can be just as lean as turkey depending on the cut. People often think turkey is lean and steak is fatty. That's not accurate. Depends on the cut you're having, but those are excellent sources. Also, if you're only doing this, you need to incorporate a lot of fish. You need omega-3s in your diet. You need omega-3s for brain health. You need omega-3s for your triglycerides. You need omega-3 for your cholesterol. You need omega-3s for your A1Cs, and this is where people fuck up. You should be having salmon or trout or sardines or anchovies, one of those foods a couple times a week. And you should actually like specifically aim to do this. The other thing you can do is get a really, really high quality fish oil supplement, or you can be like me and do both. I take 2 grams of EPA in the morning, I take 2 grams of DHEA in the evening, and then I still have fish twice a week. But every day you want to get protein, obviously about 0.8 times your body weight in protein. We have all the studies in the world on this stuff. I know that people will push for more. I'm just telling you the minimum. I'm not telling you you can't do more than that, but you want to have at least 8.8 times your body weight in protein. People online will tell you 1 gram of protein per pound. You know why they do that? Because people are dumb. Not the people online, but the people they're talking to, and they know that, and they know that telling somebody 0.8 times your body weight is too complicated for most Americans. We have meta-analysis that you can't even use above 0.7 times your body weight in protein, like series of studies looking at it. The only reason I say 0.8 instead of 0.7, it's not all proteins created the same. Some protein has less amino acids, so to safeguard yourself, I would put it at 0.8. But some people still argue about how often you have to have protein in order for achieve like optimal muscle protein synthesis. The first and foremost rule is I'll give you a second, eat adequate and total amount of protein. That's the number one thing. The second thing is to try to break it up through the day, but you don't need more than 4 meals. I'm so jacked that I don't even really care if I'm any more jacked. I want to lose a couple more pounds of fat and I'm pretty much good. I'll get a little bit bigger calves because when you get past 30 calves, it's more important than the size of your penis. My penis size, it doesn't matter anymore. It's all about the calves. If I see big calves on a guy, I'm like, whoa, all right, awesome. So the thing that most people have been confused about until recently, there's a big study in the last year, I don't know if you guys saw it, where it was 40 grams of protein versus 100 grams of protein post-workout. Anybody see that research? The absorption of it. So you've always heard these people say, oh, there's an upper limit to muscle protein synthesis, how much protein you can have. It's so much more complicated than that because if you have fiber, it slows down digestion. If you have fat, it slows down digestion. Your body has something called mTOR. When you first wake up in the morning, you have more mTOR. After you work out, you have more mTOR. You can absorb more protein. So the first number is really total amount of protein and then try to break it up into 4 meals. But if you can't, you're still better off having it in 3 meals and hitting it. To have 5 meals a day, it's not even worth it. It just doesn't make sense anymore.
If you're basically like executive on the go or something, and you can't get that much chicken and steak, do you recommend supplementing with like shakes and other things?
Yeah, so first and foremost thing is hit the number. Then number 2 is timing of it, and then 3 to an extent is bioavailability of it, but to a certain extent. There's a war on whey protein and things like that right now. I get it because again, people are dumb. I'm not talking about anybody in this room and I'm not saying it, but we have to say these simple things like 1 gram of protein per pound because it's tough to say to people 0.8 grams of protein per pound. I don't want to lose other people who are, look at their different stages of life. Maybe you're 16, 17 years old. We want them to all hear and understand what we're saying. In regards to like processed food being bad, yes, of course processed food is bad, but we're probably more talking about Doritos than we are chopped onions. Chopped onions is technically processed food. Tonight, even if I went to that restaurant and all I had was salmon and I had potatoes with it, it would still be processed. The word processed doesn't mean anything without definition. Processed just means it was prepped for food. That's all it is. Cut up onions is processed food. So is whey protein processed? It's no more processed than cheese. So is it processed? Yes. Does processed always matter? No, it doesn't. And there's foods that are more minimally processed that can also cause problems, right? Like even high levels of saturated fat. People don't talk about it, but I know saturated fat is like big and everybody's like, oh, steak. High levels of saturated fat can raise A1C more significantly than simple carbohydrates can. It's kind of funny to see like carnivore right now. Again, I don't want to offend anybody, but it's just such an oversimplification. Like you can have vegetables. Who the fuck thinks vegetables are bad for you? Where are you even getting this notion from? It's crazy. Matter of fact, I'll tell you, if you do this, the complication is that you actually have to be very reliant on getting healthy fats from these things. You have to have olives, you have to have avocados, things like that. So let's go back to this again. So we've got our protein kind of covered. Let's talk about fruit and vegetables and why they're important. Fruit and vegetables in general, there's exceptions, avocados high in calories, but in general are very low calorie while still being incredibly dense in micronutrients. And so you're getting examples of antioxidants. Antioxidants help fight things like cancer, diabetes, atherosclerosis, which is a fancy word for heart disease, things like that. And so they're very, very high in those things while still at the same time having very little calories. They also have something called fiber, and fiber is huge for a number of health factors. We actually have studies that look at every 10 grams of fiber decreases all symptoms mortality by 10%. Every 10 grams of fiber decreases all symptoms mortality by 10%, which means if you have 100 grams of fiber a day, it doesn't mean you have a 100% chance of not dying. That's my whole point in saying that. But it does mean that you're 100% less likely to get cancer. You're 100% less likely to get heart disease. So fiber is incredibly important, and fruits and vegetables are really chock full of fiber. So I would tell you, if you take this approach, you have to make sure that you're getting your healthy fats and make sure that you're getting plenty of fruit and vegetables. And then I would also tell you, if you want to perform, if you want to be yoked like this dude, you have to eat potatoes, because you need things that have glucose in them in order to have proper carbohydrates to fuel your workouts. And sweet potatoes are reliant on this method. And again, you need healthy fats, monounsaturated and polyunsaturated fats. You need things like olives. You need things like avocados. This is a very basic, this is my nutrition for dummies approach. The next level up, and I just want to talk, we'll get into this, I don't know how much time we'll end up having, but let's get into the next level up, which is do you actually want to learn the language of nutrition? What you're gonna end up having to fucking do is you're gonna have to learn portion size, because that's what I do. That's how I'm able to go to Resdora tonight, because it's, what time is it, 12? So it's 12 o'clock, and all I've had today so far was a shake from Lifetime with strawberries, bananas, and some peanut butter 2 scoops away. That's all I had. When I go home tonight, today, this afternoon, all I'm going to have is some vegetables and some protein with some very, very light olive oil on it. And that's going to be my next meal, because I'm going to save my calories for tonight. Because tonight I'm going to fucking eat 3,000 calories. So I'm saving my calories for later is all I'm doing. And I'm just making sure along the way I still have some protein, so I'm achieving muscle protein synthesis. So that is the next thing. If you are more advanced than nutrition for dummies, and there's nothing wrong with this. This is a great place. If you're completely confused and your life is too hectic, this is the place to start. But let's talk about nutrition for intermediates, and then we'll get into a little bit of advanced stuff, and then you guys can ask questions. So for intermediates, the number one thing you need to understand is portion. Portion is king in nutrition. Calories is king. Now, with this mode over here, we didn't even address calories. Why didn't we? Because we were just doing it through nutrient selection. It's really hard to eat too much chicken and too much broccoli. You're probably not gonna end up overweight if all you're doing is eating chicken, broccoli, and potatoes. That's why it's very effective for losing weight. The first law of thermodynamics is energy cannot be created nor destroyed, it can only be transferred. What does that mean? If you go outside and you run right now, you're gonna burn energy while you're running, and that energy, the calories that you eat are oxidated through a process, and you actually oxidate the food that you're eating, so you burn them up. And that's what our modern day understanding of nutrition is based on in terms of calories is the modality for weight loss. So the first thing you'd have to really address is, what are the calories that I need to eat in a day? And then I'm gonna bring it back to you again, protein. And then there's 2 systems. There's if it fits your macros. And I said, again, this is like mostly a rough guide for me, this board. Or there's what I do, which is flexible dieting. And this is for intermediates. So calories is king. How do you figure out your calories? There's a couple different things you can do. You can do estimates where you go online. There's called a TDEE, total daily energy expenditure. This is a calculation that you can do online, and it will tell you based on your level of activity how many calories you burn a day. Again, I'm not telling you this might be ideal for you, but it definitely, if you want to optimize, you have to go from this to that. You can still primarily eat this like I do, but if you want to have a real life and you want to go do things like I was at the World Series on Wednesday and then that kind of lifestyle, you have to know and understand portions. It's the only fucking way to do it. So you calculate your TDE, total daily energy expenditure, and based on that, it will give you how many calories you should be eating a day. And then you can start to track, you can start to portion, and you can start to think about those things. The other thing you can do is you can go, I don't know how many people are here from Westchester or around there? Most of you guys, okay, great. So XFit Labs is great. I think Vin does it at HPLT as well through them. Isaiah's amazing. XFit Labs will do an RMR test for you. I think it's $150. You put the mask on, you breathe in. I would tell you to go both do that and the VO2 Max. It's $300 for both, and you'll get incredible data on it. VO2 Max, one of the leading correlations with longevity, more so than prior heart attacks, more so than smoking. Really good indicator where you're at. I have a VO2 Max of 53. If you're sick of hearing me talk about myself, it's okay. I warned you in the beginning. That's why we started with the whole, my dad was an alcoholic story, so I wouldn't be insufferable. But I have a VO2 Max of 53, and I take it very seriously because I'm a meathead and I lift a lot. So it's really important for me as a big guy that I have really good heart health. But I also got my RMR done, and there we had the score of 4,440 calories, which is an astronomical amount of calories, and it gives me a lot of room to play with it. So you need to figure out how many calories you are. Then we go back to protein. Protein is the most important macronutrient. There are 4 macronutrients. We only really talk about 3. Carbs, fats, and protein. Again, you need about 0.8 grams of protein times your body weight. First thing you want to think about is total amount of protein. Second thing you want to think about is breaking it up throughout the day. And then the third thing you want to think about is the quality of sources of protein that you're having. Most of them are probably pretty interchangeable. Like we just did a study looking at pea protein versus beef. You guys won't want to believe this, but they were pretty similar in what they achieved in terms of muscle protein synthesis. But then they also compared like Beyond Meat to beef, and beef blew Beyond Meat they blew it away in the test. There are certain things like collagen. Who here is familiar with collagen, the protein? Doesn't cause muscle protein synthesis. Whenever I see collagen in something, I'm a little weary. It will help your fingernails. Phenomenal. That beard will look absolutely stellar, but it's not gonna help these bad boys, right? So just being, maybe. I'm gonna lean towards no. Bones, tendons, ligaments is probably more a possibility. We know it doesn't actually help with bones, to be really direct, it doesn't help with bones. I've been wrong about things. CBD, I didn't think it would do anything for inflammation. I thought it was ugly market. It's great for inflammation. I take CBD every morning, it's neuroprotective. I take 1,200 milligrams, a little tincture, no THC in it. Infrared saunas, I thought infrared saunas were gonna be a complete joke. Turns out they're just as effective as traditional saunas. I still have a traditional sauna at home. I prefer it. I prefer the modality of it. I like the romance of it. I wanna be romanced a little bit when I'm getting in my sauna. But it's just as effective infrared. So, and then if it fits your macros, that's where you track your carbs, your fats, your protein. I will tell you for most of you guys, if you're not going to be a sprinter, if you're not gonna be an Olympic lifter, you don't really need to worry about doing if it fits your macros. Instead, just focus on your total amount of calories and your protein. And then I track my fiber. And I track my fiber and my protein for two reasons. One, protein, because we need protein for muscle protein synthesis. And then two, protein is a guiding light, meaning that I'm eating foods that are nutrient dense. Because traditionally, most foods that have protein, they're not junk food. It's kind of changed. Now there's like protein chips and there's all this other stuff. But once upon a time, if you got a lot of protein in your diet, it meant that you ate a lot of single ingredient foods. And most of the time, if you're eating a lot of fiber, you're still eating a lot of single ingredient food. So if you have a diet that's high in fiber, you probably also have a diet that's high in fruit and vegetables. So I use these two because protein and fiber, because it makes really good nutrient selection. I'm primarily selecting these things by doing it. And that, I would say to you, is nutrition for intermediates. 10 grams of fiber per 500 calories, I think is a really good marker. So let me give you an example. If you ate a 1,500 calorie a day diet, you'd have 30 grams of fiber. In general, the recommendation is somewhere around 15 to 20 grams of fiber for most Americans. Most people are eating somewhere between 15 and 2,000 calories according to recommendation. I like to go higher because the health benefits for you, and it's just more of a guiding light of eating cleaner. But the one thing I'll say is that correlation doesn't equal causation, and that thing is by people who have high fiber, all those studies that they're less likely to have disease. Remember, if you're bothering to eat asparagus or Brussels sprouts every day, you're probably doing a lot of other healthy stuff as well. So that's why I say just because you have high fiber, it could also be a correlation of the people who are having more fiber are also doing a host of other healthy things for themselves.
Fiber supplementation.
Yeah, psyllium husk. Amazing option. So I view, it helps you shit. So great, but here's a great point. I'll go to your question one second, but let's just address that. When you are regular, we just think about, oh, you're regular. Well, feeling regular is a great feeling, but also too, believe it or not, constipation is linked to dementia and Parkinson's as well. So why? Because we're learning more and more about gut microbiome. I am not gonna sit here and pretend that we understand gut microbiome. Anybody who does that with you doesn't know what they're talking about. I did an hour-long podcast with a gentleman named Dr. John Baker. He's a friend of mine from college. He went on, he has a lab at UCLA. We don't understand microbiome totally yet. We understand some basic, very basic things about it, but being regular, pooping on a regular basis, helps a lot with gut microbiome. It also helps a lot with dementia. So there's benefits even in of itself. When you think about supplementation, here's how I think about it. When you're trying to get to this protein goal, you know, I rarely have, what I use most days, my protein supplement, the way I view it is actually Greek yogurt. I usually wake up and my Greek yogurt, you'll stay, that's like my protein shake, right? It's processed. You guys think Greek yogurt's not processed. Greek yogurt is an example of something that's healthy for you that's processed. Greek yogurt does not come out of a cow. You didn't think it went through a process to get there? You think it's that fucking different than dairy? One's cold, one's heat. So when people are like, whey protein is no good for you. Okay, is Greek yogurt no good for you? They're both dairy. They're both processed. Like, just, you gotta think outside of a box here, guys. Like, you just understand, people are trying to sell you things all the time. I'm here, I don't even mean this a bad way. Pat wants to sell his fucking one-to-many option. I sell coaching through the wazoo. We have 9 people on a wait list. We're gonna jack up the price again because I have a ton of people that are gonna do it. Michael Cherno's gonna sell you some oatmeal later. That's why we're here. It's a part of the deal, right? But at the same time, you just wanna make sure that the message is authentic. So Pat has an authentic message. I have an authentic message. There's a real purpose behind it. And people, at the end of the day, my girlfriend always jokes and says, you're an asshole, but you help so many people, right? So she's like, yeah, so, you want to be aware of these things, at least that we're talking about. So again, Greek yogurt versus that, they're both processed. I use that a lot of times as my supplement. There's a reason for my rant. We'll get back to your fiber supplement. That's my supplement every day to get there. You could use whey protein. You could use protein bars. They're perfectly fine. To varying degrees, all of those things are processed. I personally use Greek yogurt, and then I have 3 whole meals. A lot of times I'm lucky, I have a meal prep company that sends me food. I used to be poor and I didn't have any money, or I used to have more time and I could do it, and I would use a crock pot. And that's how I'd meal prep all the time. And I'd have 2 of those meals. I'd take 2 crock pot meals with me to work, and then I'd have my Greek yogurt, and then for dinner I'd cook a fresh cooked meal every single night, and that's how I did it. In terms of fiber supplements, the way I view it is the same way. A protein bar is a supplement to help hit your protein target every day. Whey protein is a supplement every day to help you hit your protein every day. Mission Carb Wraps have a ton of fiber. That's a great supplement. 647 bread has a ton of fiber. That's a great supplement to hit your goal every single day. Those can be used to hit it. A really, really natural source is psyllium husk. And psyllium husk is actually seeds that are ground up. They're very low in calorie and they're very high in fiber. And that's what I would consider supplementation. Psyllium husk is a really great way to do it. And then getting foods like protein bars, a lot of times have a lot of fiber. Mission Carb Wraps, 647, you can use it to help supplement. I use a couple supplements every day to help me get there, but primarily fruit and vegetables should be your main mechanism or the main thing you're trying to strive. You should be having at least a couple cups of fruit and vegetables with every single meal. Period. I wake up every day. First thing I do is I have fresh pressed extra virgin olive oil. I then have my CBD. I get in my car, I drive to work. I have my Greek yogurt with my raspberries, and I have some dark chocolate above 70% cacao. And that's how I start my day. And if you look at that meal is primarily high fat. It's not protein, again, because my meal is I actually eat a moderate amount of protein a day. I was deficient in vitamin D. My range was like 13. I needed to be above 30. So I started taking 10,000 IUs a day. What do? I then go retest. At that point, I was in my 30s, but optimal is in the 60s. So I started taking 15,000 IUs a day. I jumped all the way up to above 100, which is not good. You don't want to be that high. So then I dropped down to 1,200. It took me 9 months to figure out my vitamin D levels. That's what real life is like. I'm sorry. When we get to this level, this is where you start to ask yourself questions and you start to go get testing and you start to push yourself. For a beginning, everyday person, do I think you really need to have perfect optimal levels of vitamin D? No. But at this point, I'm bored and I just want to get my vitamin D as optimal. I'm kidding. At this point, I'm trying to optimize everything. I just had an executive health scan done about 3 weeks ago, where we did the MRI on my brain, we did an MRI on my full body, we did a DEXA scan, the whole 9 yards. I fucking took a shit in a thing that looks like what you put your hot dogs in. Yeah, I was like, and I sat there and I put them into these vials of liquid and had to shake them. I sat in my fucking bathroom for 30 minutes shaking up my poop into these fucking vials. And then I dropped them off to them. I'm like, all right, here you go, guys. So that's, I know. Look at me now, a kid from 959 population to taking shits in 4 vials. I did it, guys. So this is where people fuck up all the time. Okay, you see these bodybuilders, they're dead at 30 years old, right? They're taking super physiological levels of hormones and their kidneys shit out, right? And then there's these guys who they're 60 something years old and they have hypogonadal, they're very low levels of testosterone. They not only look like shit, but they feel like shit. Well, because there's the correct number of testosterone that you're supposed to have in your body. Too little is bad, too much is bad. Too much calcium is going to cause the same thing, osteoporosis, as too little calcium. But in terms of taking a ton of supplements, I was originally Mr. Supplements are all a joke into I probably take 12 pills a day now. And I think that's partly because I'm just in that weird space. I think it's also too because I'm more aware of what works and now doesn't. We have more science that's constantly coming up. But I still think supplements are, what we're gonna get into, advanced. At some point, if you have a good doctor, if he does not ask you to get your labs done, you need to fire your doctor immediately. And then afterwards, he's gonna say, hey, let's take your blood. If they don't take your blood when you go see your doctor, can that guy immediately. And you should be doing your blood work, and that blood work comes back, and then you should be having, if you have a doctor that's good, you should have something called My Charts, and then My Charts, you should be able to see all your numbers for everything, right? And they should be able to walk through and look at all those numbers. Don't. By the way, don't please, I'm not in any way attacking you when I'm joking around about this, but you need to get your labs done, and it's covered. If you have health insurance, labs are covered twice a year under the Preventative Health Care Act. I don't think everybody who's 30 years old needs to get your labs done twice a year. I don't, but you need to at least get them done once a year. But for most people, you probably need to get it twice a year because most of you guys, and especially if you're gonna start trying to optimize things, you really wanna start looking at that stuff. You should be getting your labs done twice a year. If you're 40 years old, you should start looking at your PSA, right? Do you guys know what your PSA is? Yes, public service announcement about prostate-specific androgens. This is your public service announcement about prostate-specific androgens. This is your best indication if you have prostate cancer. Every man in this room will have prostate cancer. It is a question to what severity and at what point in your life you will have that prostate cancer. Serious enough? You guys got it? Okay, good. Great, great. Yeah, 100%.
Really? 100%. Because it might be stage 1.
So if you looked at, when you start looking at when you're younger, they're gonna tell you your range is between 0 and 4. And then when they tell you when you're 65, your range is about 4. You're just having some level of it. Some people start to get like 23 and stuff like that. They start taking medications for it. It's to what extent do you have the prostate-specific androgen? Everybody has that androgen, and those levels bump up over time. Everybody's gonna have dementia at some point. It's just a question of you die from something else first. Right? I mean, these are the things. Do you remember when people used to say, oh, my great-grandmother died from old age? There's no such thing as dying from old age, guys. No one's ever died from old age. Medicine wasn't where the point it is today, so we don't know what they died from. My grandmother, she was German. She was crazy like me. I remember my grandmother was 93 years old. I walked into the kitchen. She was sitting down, and I go, Mom, we're all down in the family room, and I go, Mom, do you need some help getting up? She was sitting like this. I go, Mom, do you need some help getting up? I don't need any help getting up. I was like, all right. I was like, cool. That was her personality, right? I got my personality from her. When she was 98 years old, she died from congestive heart failure. That was what she died from, but she didn't have heart disease her whole life. It's just eventually you're gonna die from heart disease or eventually you're gonna die from cancer. Eventually you're gonna get dementia. It's just how long do you hold on for? Something's gonna kill you. You know how strong this chain is? How strong is a chain? Weakest link. That is how strong a chain is. And eventually, whatever chain you have, one of them will break. You're only gonna hold on for so long. Probably, with unless science comes in and does something miraculous, in the next X amount of years, we're all gonna die in this room. But I'm gonna say it's still a safe bet. We're all gonna die in this room. All right, and on your chain, something's gonna break. It's gonna be either your heart or cancer or your mind. Something's gonna go eventually. So it's just a question of at what point does it happen, right? I probably won't die from dementia. I mean, dementia will not probably be in the cards for me. I'll probably die from something else. It doesn't look like it's gonna be heart disease. I could make some bad decisions going forward in the future. If you had a guess, I would guess from just having my executive health scan done, I'll probably die from cancer. And you say, oh, Jake, that's like really morbid. I'm just telling you, I have my family history of cancer on my mom's side. I don't have any signals of it yet, but if you just asked me what am I gonna die from someday, I'll probably die from cancer. That seems the most likely. So back to advance, so positive, oh my God. PSA, if you're over 40 years old, you should be getting your PSA done. 45 years old, a colonoscopy. These are things that you should absolutely be doing. In terms of your blood work, things you wanna look at, I'll just go through it real quick. One of the biggest things that you wanna look at is your A1C. This is your likelihood of having diabetes. When you get your labs back, you want A1C of at least below 5.7, maybe even below 5. You guys should write this down. If you're not writing it down, you don't have to, but you should write it down. But if you're not, it's okay, I forgive you. But in all seriousness, this is really important. A1C, one of the #1 things you wanna look at when you're getting labs done. 5.7, you want it below that, maybe below 5. Really, really important marker. When you look at cholesterol, they tend to look at LDL, they tend to look at VLDL. Those are really important health markers. You also want to ask for apolipoprotein, known as A and B. Apolipoprotein A and B. Very, very good indicators of heart disease. You can put it as APOB and APOA. They will not always run these labs standard. You want to look at your glucose levels. Are they in range? That's for like your pancreas. For you guys, the meatheads in the room, creatinine levels, not creatine, creatinine levels, very important, bun ratio, and GFR. Bun, blood urethra nitrogen levels, creatinine.
In your opinion, Nick, what's a high creatinine?
So here's a great question. I'm gonna go through it. I'll go through it because it's really, really important you understand this. So, because this is where, that's why I said the meatheads in the room, it's important we talk about this for a second. So they're gonna give you 3 markers standard on a test. They're gonna give you bun ratio, creatinine levels, and GFR. A lot of times, if you're jacked, Dave's really jacked, it's likely that he might get elevated creatinine levels because you're so jacked, because your muscles are breaking down and repairing because you're using them on a regular basis. I wouldn't be that alarmed about your creatinine levels being up unless your GFR was up as well.
My doctor told me that I had stage 4 chronic kidney disease.
So the next thing,
8.6.
that you want to do is you want to get a GFR with cysteine. Did he do this or no?
Well, then I went to a different doctor because I was.
Then they didn't care.
Yeah.
But let's actually, can I be?
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to be one on Instagram. All I do is people pay me to have conversations with them to go have conversations with doctors. Because in general, the medical system doesn't care. And in general, you get some bozos like this. Todd actually just called me recently about all this. About a series of numbers that were up, which I think for him is relative to dehydration. In Dave's case, I think it's related to he's so jacked. Dehydration can cause elevations in your kidneys. No, it's true. I mean, you probably have elevated creatinine levels too. So, yeah, exactly. He's not that cool. The best. So what can end up happening is if you eat too much protein, your bun ratio can get elevated. And if you're too jacked, your creatinine levels can get elevated. And they give you a GFR. If your GFR is not elevated, I wouldn't be concerned from that, but I wouldn't leave it alone. I would then go get a GFR with cysteine. You run it with cysteine, and that's actually specifically designed for people who have a higher protein diet and things like that. You should go get that lab looked at.
Timing in regards to, I'm a big freak too of mental health and gut health and the biggest nerve for recovery and slowing down anxiety, depression. The times that we eat when we first wake up and then before bed.
Yeah.
In regards to
It is important that you stop eating about 3 hours before bed. It is important that you stop, and there's for multiple reasons. One, especially if you had a deviated septum, you probably had sleep apnea, and so that will significantly help. Yeah, so it'll significantly help with sleep apnea. There's a lot, also too, I'm not a big, like people talk about sugar all the time. It's very important that you cut sugar before bed because you have gut microbiome, but you also have microbiome in your mouth. And the microbiome in your mouth, after you brush your teeth, you don't want to have anything. You should just have your dinner, and whatever time that's set up, brush your fucking teeth and don't eat another fucking thing. And just be like, and just brush your teeth and say, I can't eat it now that I did it. Sugar before bed, when it sits there and it ferments in your mouth, is very bad for the microbiome in your teeth. I am not even remotely an expert on that, but I do know John Baker knows a ton about it, and I spoke with him. And the biggest concern he had, because we talked about, is sugar a big deal for a gut microbiome? He said, probably not. I asked him how about, he said, yeah, we're still figuring it out. I asked him how about aspartame and all that stuff, because you hear people talking about it all the time online. He said, we don't know yet. And that, by the way, you might not like that I said that, and you might watch stuff online. I'm just telling you what somebody who works for Pfizer and made a lot of money working for Pfizer told me, and I'm telling you what somebody who has a lab at UCLA told me. I'm not telling you what Gary Brecka or whatever fucking guy's trying to sell you whatever fucking thing online. Remember, we're all trying to sell you things. Remember that. So when you hear information, just remember, in this day and age, these people who get up and they try to sell you stuff. I sell coaching packages. I talked about my coaching package at least 4 times today. All right? I drove all the fucking way out here. Somebody better fucking buy coaching. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Don't worry. I'm going to put it on YouTube. 3,000 people are going to see it. People are going to buy. Don't worry. The main things you can do for your gut microbiome, the main things, exercise, eat fiber, be at a correct weight for your body, and I can't remember the other one, but it was another like obvious thing like people should do. Yeah, Greek yogurt. But it's just things that people obviously should do. We just don't know a lot. 10 years ago, I was telling people we're 10 years away from understanding microbiome, and now I'm gonna tell you we're still 10 years away from understanding microbiome. It's really, really complex because the problem is it changes based on what you eat, and it's so unique to every person here because it's so reactive to the decisions you make. And that's why it's hard. It's like when I talked about muscle protein synthesis earlier, it's very hard to explain muscle protein synthesis because if you have fiber, it slows down the digestion of it. If you had protein 3 hours ago, it's different than if you eat protein right now. So it's very complex because there's so many different ways that you can travel with it. Does that make sense? So we got GFR done, that's our kidneys, all of that. Those are important things that we should be looking at our labs. I mentioned AST and ALT, that's your liver. Those are important to look at. I wanna just do a real quick, really quick thing on supplements, and then I'll take questions. So I told you that I was Mr. like no supplements whatsoever. I'm just gonna give you some real quick things, and then you guys can ask questions about it on supplementation. And remember, now we're in advanced here because we've talked about labs, all these things. We've talked about preventative health. Another thing you should be doing for preventative health, at some point in your 30s, if you're over 30 years old, you should ask your doctor for an EKG. I just happened to be AFib. I had to have a cardioversion to kick me back out of it. Their thinking was it was either somehow a COVID related, or I'm type A and I also have a very low resting heart rate. My resting heart rate's about 54. So they thought maybe that's what caused it. But all this to say, telltale sign, if you're really in shape and you're AFib, you might not even be aware of it. Because usually what happens when you're in AFib, like say you're knocking around like 80s and then you bump into like 130. Me, I'm knocking around the 50s all day and then I was bumping into like the high 80s. I didn't even know I was AFib. I didn't even sense it. So EKG, another really important thing to have done. Let's talk supplements super quick. And I'm gonna talk about medical ones. I'm not telling anyone to take anything here. I'm not a doctor. First and foremost, I know everybody knows this, but creatine, monohydrate. Do I have to talk about this or do we just all know this? We all know this, right? Creatine, monohydrate, we all know this. Psyllium husk, not a must. But this is a fiber supplement. If you're not getting fiber in your diet, it's a really easy way to get fiber in your diet. Start your day with it, awesome. Some ones that I feel very strongly about that I used to not, ubiquinol. Ubiquinol is the precursor to Q10. Everybody's heard of Q10. It's a very powerful, ubiquinol is more bioavailable than CosaQ10, and it is one of the best antioxidants that you can take for heart health. It's spelt U-B-I-G-U-I-N, I think, A-L, ubiquinol. Very important to take. NAC, is anybody familiar with NAC? N-acetylcysteine, NAC. Who's heard of glutathione? Anybody? I'm sure you have, right? So everybody talks about that right now, but this is actually a cheaper way of achieving that and will cause your body to secrete it. Your liver secretes that anyhow, but this will cause more production of this. And this can help significantly with a lot of things, but cancer is one of the big thinkings behind taking NAC. I take that every single day. Omega-3s. So fish oil is EPA and DHEA. I like Nordics Natural. I'm not promoting any of these brands. I don't have any affiliation with them, but that's a pretty affordable brand. I actually take prescription grade EPA and DHA. I take 2 grams in the morning. You think I'm crazy, right? Take 2 grams in the morning and then I take 2 grams in the evening. You're probably used to seeing people like me every day, so yeah. So, but I take EPA and, yeah, you're one of them, good, okay. Good, I'm among friends. So take fish oil, very important for triglycerides, great for LDL, great for brain health, something really important to take. So we've got creatine, psyllium husk, ubiquinol, NAC, EPA, DHEA, some prescription or like sort of like you want to get, as you age, your levels checked. Make sure that you're getting looked at your testosterone. I will tell you flat out, getting on TRT is a major decision. There will always be complications with it. See back here, all right, see that? I'm just joking around with you guys, but I'm gonna have to get a hair transplant at some point. I know it's coming. Also too, I never had hair on my body. I have hair on my body now. Those are the small things, but I was like, I don't know, 37, I got TRT. I was making money. I was sleeping with very attractive women. And I did not think I was gonna ever end up with anybody. And then my college sweetheart called me up and said, hey, I fucked up all those years ago. And then I had to go through IVF to have a kid. So just understand, like you think you're like, oh, I'm 37, I'm never gonna have kids, so let's get on TRT. And then I'm like, oh, fuck. So IVF was like a 6-month process and like, X amount of dollars later. So just know that TRT is not a simple answer, but you want to start around 30, getting your testosterone levels checked and watch it over the years, both your total and your free testosterone. Having too low of a number puts you at risk for heart disease. It might, I'm not promising this one, put you at a risk for prostate cancer, and having too high of a level theoretically is bad for you as well. Don't abuse steroids, we all know that here, right? The first thing if your numbers are low on testosterone, guys, is change some lifestyle things. Try to sleep, try to reduce stress, good luck. You live in Westchester, good luck. But try to sleep more. Try to make sure that your nutrition's dialed in. Try to be active, those things. If you're overweight, lose the fat first. But for me, it just came down to I'm about that life. I did not think I would ever be this jacked on TRT. I will tell you honestly, I'm like 255 right now, and like, I'm just like, Jesus. I mean, I keep growing on it because it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's just, there's no Hulk like gamma radiation. It's just slowly over time, it compounds. I was on the Nick Bear's podcast, and he had a great saying, and he said, consistency compounds. And that's the truth, it just compounds. So over time, you'll just keep growing. But I think not doing TRT when you're in your 40s is like not taking a tax write-off. I just think you're a tummy. I'm like, all right, cool. I'm like, good. I'm like, just one more chance for me to look better than you. Cool. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna fucking write off this Audi and I'm gonna fucking take this TRT. Good luck. All right, cool. Smart man. Here's the most unfortunate thing about bodybuilding. We don't have to segue into this because we're not all meatheads here, but I'll just say this real quick. The thing about when you look at bodybuilders, you know Arnold Schwarzenegger's still alive, right? You know who Dorian Yates is? He's still alive. Do you know who Ronnie Coleman is? He's still alive. Do you know who Jay Cutler is? Well, that's different though. That's not related to testosterone, that's lifting. Do you know who Jay Cutler is? He's still alive. You know the guys who competed with them? They're dead. Because genetics is king. It's just king. The top guy is gonna be the top guy. I listened to Tony Gonzalez who talk about NFL, and they asked what percent of people are working like Tom Brady? He goes, no one. And they go, well, Tony, you worked really hard. He goes, Tom Brady didn't even drink. Tom Brady wouldn't have a tomato. He goes, I drink. He's like, but he said, I worked harder than 99% of the other people in the NFL. So they asked him, what percentage of people are doing the bare minimum in the NFL? Do you know what he said? He's 80%. That's exactly what he said. Who said that? He said 80% were doing the bare minimum, meaning they were only showing up the mandatory stuff. So when you look at athletes and you look at their training programs or their nutrition, don't bother. Don't bother. They are just, maybe Tom Brady, yes, even though TB12 is a fucking joke. But don't bother. The top guys are just, God gave it to them. And even me, I was very built when I was younger and strong and those things. And like, there's no shock. I mean, I wasn't shocked when I was a hyper responder to TRT. It wasn't shocking. There are also guys like Liver King who are spending $12,000 a month and are never gonna get on an Olympia stage in life. I bet you Chris Bumstead, Liver King probably said was spending $12,000 a month when Derek More Plates released that. I bet you Chris Bumstead probably spends $12,000 a year on his stack because God just went, boom. If Chris Bumstead wanted to be an open class bodybuilder, he could. He'd be dead, he'd die. I know, but if he wanted to be one like a Mr. Olympia level, he could do it. It's just certain people have it and certain people don't, and you just never look at the other person's homework assignment, right? But get your testosterone looked at, supplements that testosterone, obviously, if you need it, and at some point, consider it. And then I can't find my black pen, here it is. One I would tell you to look at, I'm not telling you to get this, is metformin. I don't know if you guys are familiar with this. Remember, I was dyslexic. You guys are supposed to have compassion for me. I told you that story at the beginning. Metformin, very, very, very good for A1C, some forms of cancer. A lot of people are refuting it to be like the new miracle longevity drug. So it's not something I'm telling you to take. I'm just putting it on your radar. Telmisartan. Okay, so now we're getting real. Okay, so let's just talk about this for a second. If you are gonna take TRT, telmisartan is a great blood pressure medication to take with. I don't have high blood pressure and I take telmisartan. I don't know if you do, but if you're on TRT, you should consider getting on telmisartan. Here's why, because one of the number one things you have to worry about, Dave, you too, you're cool like us. One of the number one things you have to worry about is left ventricle thickness when you take TRT, or when you abuse steroids. But there's a risk anytime as you get very jacked that you can get, the left ventricle can get thickened. I just had an echocardiogram, it came back perfect. But telmisartan has been shown to decrease the likelihood of left ventricle thickness, also lower hematocrit levels, while at the same time help mitigating blood pressure. So if you are taking TRT, telmisartan is a great drug to look at. They probably will push you to a lodipine at first. I'm not a doctor, I'm not pretending to be one, but I would go the route of telmisartan instead because it helps a lot of the things like that. So you should look at that if you're taking TRT. And then if you're losing your hair, minoxidil, you take it orally. It's a pill, very, very helpful. And then finasteride, the spray, you do not take the pill because systemically it can cause issues with DHT. It can cause problems down here, it's not good for anybody. And then you wanna use the spray over top of your head for finasteride. That's how you do it. And by the way, there are tons of foods that you should be eating every day. Blueberries you should be eating every day. Every single day you should have olive oil. You should be really snobby when it comes to olive oil. You want single location olive oil. Fresh pressed, cold pressed extra virgin. I take that every morning. It's overpriced. I put it in a tablespoon. Dark chocolate, one of the highest sources of polyphenols. Walnuts, an incredible source of polyunsaturated fat. Amazing option. I have that every single day. I have walnuts. Like I said, there are certain things I actively seek out. You think of food as sort of like medicine. Citrus fruits, one of the highest sources of antioxidants there are. I have raspberries. I have raspberries every day, but you could have blackberries as well. Super, super, super fucking high in fiber. I eat that every single day. I try to get some green vegetables, broccoli, asparagus, things like that. If I'm at the grocery store, what do I get? I usually get frozen berries because they're actually the highest quality and they're actually the cheapest. Because think about logistics. You have to something has to go across the country. Isn't it more likely that non-frozen berries are going to go bad, and how many are they going to lose in the course of it rather than frozen? So frozen is the cheapest way for them to transport it. So that you usually get really high quality, really affordable berries that way. In terms of like oranges, no, they have a hard shell over top of it, things like that. Avocado, again, a hard shell over top of it. Those are the things that I'm routinely having in my diet. I have a lot of sweet potatoes and potatoes, things like that. You know, again, I'm not telling you that pesticides aren't a real thing. They're not concerned. I'm not telling you that microplastics aren't a real thing. They're concerned. Some things you could do about microplastics, don't ever, and everybody's so preoccupied, their kids especially, don't ever heat up plastic in a microwave. Don't fucking do it. It's stupid. Just take it, put it in something glass and put it in the microwave. Don't get rid of your plastic cutting board. Get rid of it, remove it. And I know, I'm sorry, don't drink out of plastic bottles. And I do it. By the way, I have this here, but look, wait. Oh, I'm better than everybody. Look at this. Oh. No, but seriously, I don't usually spend $9 or whatever the fuck this cost me on this. I just was at Lifetime and I had to get it. But the plastic, but what you should be doing is using a water bottle, sincerely. If you ask me about microplastics, and again, you know, it's a major concern for people right now. Those are things that you can do that are applicable. A lot of it you can't do anything about. You're fucked. So fasting was a big thing. It was a really big push. And you're kind of seeing it dying down a little bit, intermediate fasting now, because it was so reputed. I think that having feed windows is very important. That's what term we would use like for cattle, but let's use it for people. I try to eat from like 8 to 8 every day would be a great idea. Or I eat from 6 to 8 every day, or having set times where you stop eating and eating, great idea. Do I think it's necessary to not eat for 12 hours? You could do that, and I don't think it would have any real effect. Remember I said the biggest thing is total amount of protein you eat. When you start getting past a window where it's like you're only eating now for 10 hours, so you're not eating for 14 hours a day, you're only eating for 10 hours, then you start to see it has an impact on muscle mass and things like that. So it just depends on how stringent your window is. If you're telling me you're only gonna eat one meal a day and you're gonna eat as many calories, I'm gonna sound harsh. This is what starts to happen. When you start to tell me that, I'm like, okay, I'm just backing out. You know what I mean? Because I'm just like, there's something going on with this person. There's something a little weird going on. It's like when somebody tells me I only eat steak. I'm like, okay, cool. All right. Nice to talk to you today. All right. Because it's getting a little weird. You know what I mean? Like, you can eat steak and fruit and vegetables. Like, so again, if you're telling me you don't eat for the first 12 hours a day, it's great. If you're telling me you only eat one meal a day, it's stupid. If you're telling me, hey, no, I'm not saying you, I'm just telling people. But if you're saying, hey, I think that when I first wake up, I want to wait, and it helps you and it works for you, amazing. Amazing. And that's the goal that I didn't like. But what we do see in the long run is people that intermittent fast for like 12 plus hours a day, adherence tends to dip off at a certain point, and big time. And that's why people have ditched it. And what also tends to happen is they keep making those one meal a day splurges. They start with like reasonable, and then they become this like orgasmic thing every day that it's like it becomes an event to eat one time a day, So I don't think it's essential that you eat first thing in the day. It depends on what your goals really are. If you're trying to build muscle, your first meal is your first opportunity to start your muscle protein synthesis and to break your fast. So when I wake up, I usually eat like an hour after I wake up, because I wake up, I do my bathroom stuff, I take my olive oil, so I guess that's technically eating. I get in my car, I drive, I have my coffee, my dark chocolate, and my yogurt. I don't really have much of an appetite in the morning. It usually takes me about an hour to eat that meal, and then I'm usually with clients first thing in the morning. So I do about semi-private training, about 15 hours a week in Larchmont, New York. Usually I have a 6 o'clock group, a 7 o'clock, that's where I make the majority of my money. And then I usually have like one other group a day, like a 10 or a 1, and that's it. The rest of the time I'm working with coaching, or I'm working with my social media person, or doing those sort of things. And so, I don't think that you have to eat right away, but you really, if the window is greater than 14 hours, it's gonna limit the amount of muscle. So if you wait 6 hours after you wake up, that's gonna be problematic. For at least if your goal is to build muscle. Maybe you don't care about being muscle. right? Maybe you don't care about being jacked and tan, right?
After sitting down with Jake on the podcast, I mean, you spoke about some different supplements too, which I love.
Yeah.
But you
Oh, let me say one more
Yes,
thing.
I was gonna say
Magnesium. Magnesium is huge. That's the one I fucking forgot. So there's gummies, magnesium gummies. No, yeah, gummies, weed gummies. Vin's on one right now. So there's three kinds of organic, and organic in the sense. Remember I said organic is a ubiquitous term, but when it comes to magnesium, it means that it's salt. It just means that it's a naturally occurring salt when you refer to organic magnesium. I take glycinate. Glycinate's a great option that you can take. There's also threonate, which is not the same as those, but some people have speculated, it's only speculation. The studies that we have are with rats, but that threonate helps with your brain. So you may want to consider taking threonate. I do not bother because it's still speculation. I don't care that much. And my brain health was off the charts on that thing anyhow. Even if you just listen to me for an hour, you're probably questioning that. But the magnesium glycinate, very good for magnesium levels. I would suggest that everybody, because it's very hard to get enough magnesium in your diet just through food, supplement with 300 to 400 grams a day. People who take over 300 grams of magnesium a day decrease risk of pancreatic cancer, and there's also some evidence that might decrease all risk of cancer, all symptoms of cancer. So
I was just gonna say, you know, I've been training for years and never really was into the supplements besides creatine and protein, and just because of our conversation, you know, I really started looking into
fish oil.
And I took fish oil, magnesium, and the vitamin D just because.
Great, yeah. And vitamin D, by the way, has also been shown to help build muscle.
I was really
which is
low
crazy.
too. Like after
Were you really?
Yeah.
By the way, it's been shown, it's a precursor to a lot of hormones. So, and even actually, I don't know, again, it's one study, but Menos just released a study and it looked at omega-3s and the benefits for it building muscle as well. But vitamin D, if you're not doing and you want something that's supercharged, one more I'll say too on this field, L-carnitine. If you're not familiar with it, it's not really that beneficial if you eat it, and it also goes through a process which is a carcinogen, but subcutaneous injections of L-carnitine, very, very beneficial if you want to go that route. I am always, the one thing I'll say about myself, and obviously I love myself, is that I'm always learning, and I've always pushed myself to continue to learn in the field, and I consume a crazy amount of content from just people that I really respect in the industry, or sit down and talk with Mays and people like that who, you know, really know their shit. You're welcome. Thanks, guys. Thank you.